I speak to some of our state congressmen and find out what important issues they're advocating for today, plus why it's essential for youth to engage in politics. I'm Rena Kamal. Our Issues Twin Cities starts now. Based on the state's population, Minnesota currently has 8 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Emmer is the representative of our state's 6th congressional district. He got his start in politics thanks to his family. What does their support mean to you as you are currently in office?
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have it. In fact, I ran for an office about 4 years ago that when that was all over, I thought my public service was done. And this opportunity came up. We were approached by friends, family, others. I actually sat down with my wife and I said, I'm not going to do this unless you are in it with me. And if you support it, it'll be the last time we do this. And luckily for me, she said yes. But it wouldn't have mattered. If she said no, we would have done something else. It is everything.
In 2014, Congressman Emmer won the November election. Serving since January 2015, he advocates on behalf of many important issues. What are the most important issues that you advocate for today?
Well, I'm sure this is going to change. I think in the future, the most important issues that we're going to be talking about are spending and taxes. The future, it's about getting the spending under control at a federal level. We have this huge debt, right? 18 trillion and growing. And we really haven't addressed the tax system in terms of, we're in competition not only as a state but as a country with other countries around the world for business, for opportunity, for growth. A lot of that stems from the tax code. It's too big, too complicated. Frankly, it picks winners and losers. Congress, I think, in the future is going to have to address not only the spending, but this tax code to simplify it, make it easier to understand, make it more fair, and allow it to be more competitive so that we can attract more business and grow more jobs, more opportunities for Americans. But that's the future. Since I've been there, I was assigned to the Agriculture and Foreign Affairs Committee to start, which told me the issue that I needed to get involved in was trade. Okay. So initially, it's all about building relationships, getting to know who's there, who are the people who are effective, why are they effective, who are the people who are not effective, why aren't they effective? How can we take some of the lessons from both of those so that we don't make maybe some of the mistakes that others have made and that we can benefit from the ability that others have shown?
As far as I'm concerned, in many cases, the great patriotic spirit of the men and women who served has been abused, particularly with these wars of choice in the Middle East.
For Congressman Nolan, the endless wars in the Middle East have not only cost our nation $3 trillion over the past 13 years, it has cost our troops their lives and severe injuries. As the representative of the 8th Congressional District since 2013, Congressman Nolan continues to advocate for our brave troops to come home and use our resources to rebuild America.
I've lived there, I've worked there, I've studied the language. There's no question we've been on every side of that conflict. It's been tragic in its consequences. The war in Iraq, they tell us, has cost us $3 trillion. And I've reminded people, in fact, everybody that comes into my office, for $1 trillion of those, we could have graduated every college kid in America debt-free. For another $1 trillion of that, we could have rebuilt our infrastructure, roads, bridges, rails. And for another $1 trillion, we could have given everybody in America a $1 trillion tax break. But instead, we have a profound moral obligation going forward for an additional $2 trillion to take care of the men and women who serve, who lost arms, they lost legs, they've had their brains damaged. So there's $5 trillion. And what has it produced? One of the great human tragedies in the history of humanity. Millions of people living as refugees. 1 million or more have died it's turned into a living hell on earth.
When I was in the state legislature, we tried to do a lot for our returning military servicemen and women in terms of trying to make sure they have more opportunity, connect them with not only employers, but allow them to keep more of their earnings while they're here. You know, Minnesota doesn't always treat military earnings, Social Security earnings, we tax them, right? Other states don't necessarily do that. And it just, as I got into that at the legislative level, I realized we can't do enough for these people. Imagine that you or I was leaving tomorrow for the next 6 months to a year to serve our country abroad. Not only are we putting our own life in harm's way for the safety of others, right? For the freedom that we enjoy here in this country, but we'd have to leave our families. This isn't just about the soldier, this is about the families that they support.
And it's the lives of the men and women who fight on behalf of our nation that matter most.
For the men and women who have served, put themselves in harm's way, protecting, serving us, defending us, I strongly feel that we have a real moral obligation to serve them. Abe Lincoln kind of said it best when he said that the way we treat our veterans will determine to what degree future generations will be willing to step up and serve and protect us when called upon.
Coming up on Our Issues Twin Cities, more with our Congressman on engaging youth in politics. Minnesota once led the nation in voter turnout. In the last 2012 presidential election, our state fell behind Mississippi and Wisconsin.
There's a very disturbing trend in our state. If you go back and look, starting in 2002 in the off-year elections, so the year that we don't have a presidential election like we're going to have in 2016, in 2002, we had roughly 2.3 million people vote in the general election in the state of Minnesota. In 2006, it dropped to roughly 2.2 million. In 2010, it dropped to roughly 2.1 million, and now, most recently in 2014, it dropped under 2 million. What that tells some of us is that as older voters are passing on, younger people are not joining them.
45% of young people ages 18 to 29 voted in the 2012 presidential election. Although the percentage was down from 51% in 2008, the millennial generation has proved to be more engaged voters than Generation X. In the 1990s, youth turnout was regularly less than 40%. With the elections coming up, how important is it for young people to engage in politics?
What I would say to young people is kind of what my wife said to me a few years back. You really can't complain about it unless you're willing to participate and do something about it. This country belongs to all of us, and you can't take your freedom and the opportunity that comes with it for granted. If you are truly interested in your future, then you need to be part of it by participating.
Young people have a stake in the outcome of all the political decisions made here in Washington as anyone. And the simple truth is, with regard to democracy, if you don't participate, there's a good chance in the minds of politicians that you don't exist. So if you want to have a choice, if you want to have a voice, if you want to make a difference, you got to step up and participate. And that's a message that I have for the young people in this country.
They want someone or some people, a party, to inspire them, to tell them this is why it's important to you and this is why you need to participate. I think for young people, yeah, I can tell you all day long. I tell my kids, you need to be involved. You can't complain unless you're willing to do something about it. But now on the other side, we got to give them something to be involved with.
There's so many tools out there for young people to talk to others.
Xavier, Haley, and Alfred all belong to local youth political organizations. Groups such as Minnesota Young Republicans and Minnesota Young DFL strive to encourage young people to participate in politics.
Have you guys always been interested in politics?
I started getting interested in politics in about 2004 when I was learning more about monetary policy and where money comes from and how it's created, and then it was just my mind blew because you never thought about that. Where does money come from? Is you had money in your pocket and your parents gave you money and you had to go to work to get money, but where money actually comes from, how it's created and how it affects an economy and a global economy, and I realized that had a lot to do with politics, and that's kind of my introduction, is how I got involved.
I've kind of always been involved in politics. I was born and wanted to be president when I was like 3, I think. So I'm a 5th generation Teamster, so I've been very involved in the labor movement since I was a young age. My grandpa was a union leader for the Teamsters, and so I ended up getting a job in the political section of my local union the summer going into my freshman year at college. And then in college, I went to my first college Democrat meeting and just fell in love and kind of got looped into DFL politics from there.
My parents were very politically active, very engaged on issues of social justice and that type of thing. So, like I said, the seed was there early on, but I think a lot of young people, for a long time, I kind of felt a little cynical about the political process, kind of felt like, especially as young people, we weren't really able to partake, able to engage, able to have our voices heard. And honestly, the election of Barack Obama really dissolved a lot of that cynicism for me, and made me feel like there's really no excuse. America is a wonderful place that can change. And that being said, I felt I had to get in. I had to put some skin in the game.
About 46 million young people across the nation ages 18 to 29 are eligible to vote, making today's youth a major subset of the electorate.
How would you describe today's young politician?
Things have changed a lot over the last 15 to 20 years. Obviously, when it comes to politics today, we have the 24-hour news cycle, of course. We have social media driving these types of discussions and debates and things. So I think for young politicians especially, it's all about engagement. And I'm very happy to say, I would say a lot of folks are a little fed up with the amount of partisanship and kind of lack of cooperation in Congress. And, between our organizations, we've had great collaborations.
Talk a little bit about your collaboration together.
At the beginning of this year, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to collaborate young Republicans and young Democrats in Minnesota, because there's a lot of issues young people can agree upon. And it doesn't matter what party you are, it matters to young people. And so if we can really work on what we agree on instead of what we disagree on, that's how you move forward, not just young people, but the country forward. And I think if we can set a good example in people at a young age, if they do start getting elected into politics, or older politicians can see what young people are doing and collaborating, we can lead by example at our age.
What issues do you guys feel many youth of our generation are most concerned about today?
Education is probably one of them, because everyone's coming out of school with tons of debt. Knowing whether or not they can get a job is another big one.
Environment, the effects that are happening today are going to affect young people more than any other generation. So people are really invested in the long-term things, and the environment is one of those things where all of the older generations, they are going to be long gone before these environmental effects really start impacting us. And so it's something that I know that a lot of youth have been more passionate about than the older generations.
Income inequality, or generally speaking, economic inequality, disparate opportunity for folks is becoming a much bigger and bigger issue. You can certainly see that play out in the Democratic primary, but I think also the Republican primary to some degree. There are, Republican presidential candidates who have talked about it, who have, said this is an issue that we need to solve going forward. And so, like you were saying, college affordability, environmental concerns certainly, but I think younger people are kind of focusing a bit more on economic policy these days than maybe we did, 5-10 years ago.
How can younger people get their voices heard on these issues today?
Get involved. Start getting involved. A lot of what young people and older generations tend to think is that young people are the future of the party and of the future of the political system, but that's not true. We're the present. We make change now. The thing that people need to know is that if young people get involved, they can make or break an election. They can make or break a specific policy passing.
Up next on Our Issues Twin Cities, more with our youth. Over the years, the youth vote has been cited as a significant factor in many ballot measures across our nation, especially here in Minnesota. And as Minnesota's baby boomer population is expected to double by 2030, our state's future is dependent on the younger generation. When hitting the polls, young voters have proved to be an influential force. In 2003, the youth vote helped defeat the proposed constitutional ban on same-sex marriage in Minnesota.
I think a lot of folks, especially young folks, do feel like they're shut out of the process or aren't informed enough to take part of the process, and offering those avenues of engagement and participation is what we're all about. As far as kind of the changing of the guard with young folks, we just want to make sure that people have those avenues, can feel like they're connected, can feel like they're engaged, and to promote participation.
Policy is important for that too, because you have a lot of young people coming up and they are in this situation where they're that sandwich generation where they're taking care of their own kids, but they're also taking care of their parents at the same time. So even a lot of those middle-aged or youth that are turning into that, they're going to actually be taking care of not only their parents, but also their own kids. Sure. And so getting them involved in the process and the decision-making allows them to really affect policy that can benefit them and help better take care of their families.
Some youth are disengaged or may not know too much about politics. How do you guys make politics more interesting for them?
A lot of what we try to do is do different fun events to try to get people hooked in to where we can get them involved in the process and then allow them, make sure they know they can always ask us questions. Another thing that we like to do is to have different events where we have politicians come and meet with them, because I think a lot of young people don't realize just how relatable some politicians can be. And so to get to the chance to talk with them and say what they care about is something that really gives them, skin in the game and gives them more of a want to be involved.
They like to get on the, whatever it might be, the phone, their computer, but they do all these different social media, and this is how they communicate, which is great. We need to communicate with them that way too. But you want to make it exciting? Not only figure out how to take this social media, older people like me who, I didn't have email growing up, right? But I have young people around me that help me develop this so that we can actually be at the same level, but then I need to go the next step. I need to make it interesting by going out and finding them where they are, where they exist. I mean, you got white-haired guys who expect young people to come to them. It doesn't work that way. Go out to where they are. Go out and talk to them about why this is important and encourage them to get involved, because you know what? As we move on, they're the ones that are going to be here.
People in public life need to do a better job at coming together, working together, finding common ground, fixing things, getting things done. I think that's inspirational for the younger generation. So if we take the money out of politics, start working more bipartisanly to fix and get things done, I think that'll go a long way toward inspiring young people to believe that they do have a voice, that they can make a difference.
In the last election, social media played a huge role in drawing young people to the polls.
Today we live in a world of technology. How influential is social media today, especially in politics?
We tend to get our news and our information from the internet, from social media feeds, that type of thing. Whereas, the older generation, they primarily got their info from print media, those types of things. So that being said, it is supremely important that millennials, young folks, have a way to get that information, whether that's online, whether that's through social media. And I would say, increasingly, I think that actually is really becoming a feature of our generation that, some people may judge it, but hey, if you get most of your news from Facebook, if they're, from good media outlets, then that's fine. Whatever way you get it is fine, just so long as that you do get the information and feel like you can partake in the process.
And with the elections coming up, today's millennials heading to the voting booth will especially be crucial.
I think it's important that young people, not just young people in general, but young people need to vote, because something that Haley was saying is we are the now, we are the present. And so a majority of those, the young people getting involved, if you want to make a difference and you want your voice to be out there, it is very important to vote.
I do think it is a civic responsibility and duty to try to be as informed as possible and absolutely vote. We, especially young people, we have friends who might say, I don't vote, my vote doesn't matter, it doesn't count, that type of disposition. But I always remind them, even last election here in Minnesota, there were many state house races that were decided by, less than 100 doors.
Yep.
Pardon me, 100 votes. And so you think, how many more doors could we have knocked? How many more phone calls could we have made? How many, how much more outreach would it have taken? Every vote absolutely matters.
We tend not to 100% side with political parties like the older generations tend to do. There's a lot more crossover.
Right.
So for young people, getting informed about the current issues can oftentimes change what candidate you're going to end up voting for. Instead of just blindly supporting a party, we're saying, well, hang on, I agree with this.
But I also agree with this.
But I also agree with this. Yes. So it's a good way to figure out not necessarily which party you support, but which candidate you support.
A lot of people don't realize that their vote matters just by showing up. And so if I have a friend who I know supports Democrat candidates, I say, hey, go talk to Haley, go talk to Andy, go talk to Quinton, because if they can at least make a little bit of a connection with someone on the inside who knows what's going on, they're more likely to be involved. And
What do young people have to offer to today's societies?
new ideas, innovation. A lot of them are coming out of school. They're more inept to use technology, which I think will be important. They care about the environment. I think they'll be able to use a lot of this technology and learning that they've been able to go through for schooling to apply it to everyday problems and issues. And so they're going to be bringing a lot to the table. Energy, enthusiasm. I think the fact that we're able to communicate around the world as a young person and get ideas from all over the place and be able to apply those in day-to-day operations of government and giving ideas is crucial.
And I'd say passion. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people, regardless of what they're involved in college, where their eyes just light up when they say something that they care about. When people have a stake in the game, young people especially, and when they find something they care about, they have the energy to throw themselves into it, and they have the passion to fight for what they believe in.
Thank you for joining me this week on Our Issues Twin Cities. I'm Veronica Mann. See you next time.